particular model is the smallest case that we have on display here today. As you can see in the front here, it's got quite a bit of mesh paneling in the front, which allows plenty of airflow to come in through the case and then exit out the rear. The top has an actual magnetic dust filter. On the back side of this case, you actually have about an inch worth of space between the back panel here, where the motherboard will actually sit on the opposite side here, and the actual door closing. The 2.5-inch SSDs will actually mount right here on the back of where the actual back side of the motherboard is, and the back panel here comes right off as well. So there it is. You can actually mount the SSDs to this before you put it inside of the computer, and then slide it right into place where it's supposed to go. Now, it does support a full-size ATX motherboard, which will mount right in there. It does support 3 120mm fans in the front here. It comes with one 120mm pure ring 2 fan, and then it also comes with 2 pure wing 140mm fans. Just like that. And now there is an LED strip that goes in the front here. These will actually light up RGB. And you don't have to worry about the cable getting all ripped off or anything like that when you pull the front panel off, because it's actually, it uses a contact connection here on the front side of the case. The dust filter, again, just pops right off, partially magnetic, and there's the whole front half of your case. On the back side here, it actually has 4 screws for the power supply, which is kind of cool. So what you can do is you can actually bracket this to your power supply here, screw that in, that's all set and squared away, and then basically all you do is you slide the power supply right on in. Pretty neat for a sub-$100 case. So the next case that we have here is actually the Be Quiet Silent Base 802. The case itself is available in black as well as white. The front panel is just a lift from the bottom here, and it slides right in. That's pretty neat. The top, which actually has like a top cover here, but is completely mesh on the top, is completely removable. So say you don't necessarily like the way that the top is sitting, and you want to get rid of these plastic pieces that are actually retaining a lot of the heat, you can actually use this awesome dust filter that magnetically just pops right in there, as you can see, sits in there, sits flush, and you've completely changed the look and the airflow and the amount of airflow that's inside the computer. They also include a different front panel. And you have almost a brand new, a whole totally looking, it looks completely different. That's awesome. And the inside of the case looks actually pretty awesome as well. They include a power supply shroud all the way in there, and then it snaps right on in. Look at that, boom. That's it. These little inside guys actually have little notches on them. Let me pull this out and I'll show you. So they have little notches on them that'll allow you to adjust the height of the actual plastic piece that's inside here. It supports full-size ATX boards as well as the mini ATX and flex ATX and micro ATX. Let me spin it around here so you can see the back. The back side actually has quite a bit of cable management room. It looks like you got about the same amount of inch or so depth-wise before the door actually closes on it. You have a built-in fan controller, which is from them, which is actually powered by a switch that's on the top here. You also get 3 Pure Wing 140mm fans, which is pretty awesome. It has a similar bracket, just like the 500DX that has your SSD mounting, as well as an additional SSD mounting block, which is pretty dope. The dust filter for the front, which is really easy to get to, again, just by pulling, that comes right off. There's actually a little tab in the front here. You pull down on that, boom. The bottom, and there you go. There's your other dust filter. The Silent Base 802, this is the white version, and we got one more to take a look at. So last but not least, we have the Dark Base Pro 900. This particular model is the orange version. So this particular case can be oriented in a couple different ways, as well as set up to have the motherboard oriented in a different way and all sorts of different fun little ditties that you can do with this particular model. This door is actually just magnetically sealed in there with a little push. The front of the case has room for two 140mm fans. You can actually fit three. Very similar to the 802, you have dust filter material on the front here that is easily removable, easily cleaned. On top of that, you have a dust filter that pops out of the front here. You have USB 3, USB 3.1, which is the USB-C. You have a charging port, which is pretty cool. You have a button to control the lights that are actually inside of the case. On the top here, you'll notice that there's like this plate that's sitting here. If you have a wireless charging phone like mine, you can set it right on top of there and it'll actually do the wireless charge. In this little box that's inside here, that's actually the LED strips that come with the case. Power supply shroud is completely intact and does not come out without removing a bunch of different screws and whatnot. These little plastic pieces that are in the top, very similar to the 802, pop right out and can be pushed right back in. The power supply itself doesn't have one of those brackets like the other two cases, like the 802 or the 500DX here. It actually has a recessed part of it. So you don't actually see the power supply inside, really. It actually has this short little mini AC adapter cable that goes from the back side of the case to the front. Well, not the back side, it's from the back part here to your power supply. So I have the back panel free, the screws are now free, and the back panel basically just slides straight and then pops right off. And as you can see, it has sound dampening material throughout the whole thing, but the back panel here where it says be quiet does pop right off, so you can actually remove this, and theoretically, I'm pretty sure, that fits a 120mm fan, which it does. On the back here, that is a fan controller and will run off of the motherboard if you set it up with a female-to-female PWM connector. This is also going to be your RGB splitter as well, which on the bottom here are your two ports for the 12-volt RGB. And then there's also a RGB header, that's your 12-volt RGB, that'll allow you to connect it directly from here to your motherboard, if you have that slot. And basically what ends up happening is that there's like a slot basically for your power supply to fit in on the bottom here. It has the same type of clippy cable management brackets that the 802 has as well. And then it also, as you can see, all of these screws are actually put together with just a Phillips head screwdriver. Now, if you want to orient it in a completely opposite direction and completely flip everything around, you can. In order to do any of that, all of the instructions are actually here inside of the back of the manual here, written in about 8 different languages. Between the 900, the 800, and the 500, or the 802 and the 500, they all serve their purpose, especially for what you're looking to do, depending on if you needed a little bit smaller, but yet a little bit more configurable, or if you just need it to be really small and compact. That works too. Now, I always try to put together a build starting with the chassis, just because you don't really know what's going to fit until you pick something that's a box and has dimensions on it. Now, each one of these cases are going to have all the dimensions, all of the fan sizes, how many things are going to fit in it, all listed on the Be Quiet website. If you need any sort of support or any sort of help, contact Den of Geek, contact Be Quiet, or contact ModMyMods. We'd be more than happy to help you out on your build, your next build, or builds to come. So keeping your CPU cool is probably the most important part when it comes to having a computer. How do you do that, you might ask? Well, by implementing and installing one of these awesome heat sinks that have been provided by Be Quiet. Starting off with the Pure Rock 2, this particular model has a footprint that's relatively small in comparison to these other two units. It supports up to 150 watt TDP and has a black outside shell. Now, what does TDP actually mean? Well, TDP means thermal design power, or thermal design point. And basically any chip or any component has a TDP, which is basically the amount of heat that is generated when it's running at maximum performance. But as you see, the footprint of this actual heatsink is quite a bit smaller compared to these other two units here. It has actually got this awesome black finish and comes with a whole bunch of goodies inside of the box. This is the Pure Wing 120mm fan, which if you know anything about Be Quiet fans, they are extremely quiet. All of the mounting hardware that comes with it, as well as extra clips for the fan in order to put the fan onto the actual Be Quiet heatsink here. And it comes with an extra set of clips in case you wanted to add in another fan to the other side. So you would have a push-pull configuration. The Pure Rock 2 handles up to 150 TDP. The next heatsink that's up on the docket is the Shadow Rock 3, which is, again, a little bit beefier of a heatsink. But again, the same incredible cooling properties from Be Quiet still exist. But on top of that, you also get this handy-dandy screwdriver. And the screwdriver is actually used to bolt the heatsink onto the bracket here. As you can see, there's a hole here, and if you were trying to actually tighten this screw that's down underneath here, you'd have a heck of a time trying to get a screwdriver in there. So Be Quiet is nice enough to actually include a screwdriver that, as you can see, goes all the way through. But this is also included, as well as all of the hardware, the brackets, the manual, thermal paste, and all of that good stuff inside of the box. The last but not least, the Dark Rock Pro 4. Now this is a massive heatsink. As you can see, it's almost two of the Pure Rock 2s jammed together into this one massive guy. This particular model supports up to 250 watts TDP, which again is quite a bit when it comes to just an air cooler. How do you pick between the three? Well, again, it comes down to your TDP, how hot is your chip going to run, how big of an area do you have to work with inside of, a case. You might not want to necessarily put this big honker inside of this smaller version of a case. What's going to work for you? All in all, these three different models are available from Be Quiet, from Amazon, from Newegg, from their many distributors, and would be a wonderful product to implement into your custom build. Maybe you're not so happy with the temperatures that you're getting with your air cooler and you'd like a little bit more. Well, Be Quiet has a solution for you. These are the Pure Loop AIOs, and AIO stands for All-in-One Water Cooling System. This particular model is a 120mm, this is a 240, and the one on the bottom is a 360. Now, what does that mean? Well, basically, when we're talking about radiators and cooling, we're talking about fan size. So 120 means 120mm fan size. 240 means two 120mm fans. 360, you guessed it, three 120mm fans. Now, how do you choose between the three of these different options? Well, it kind of comes down to two different things. How hot is the component that you're trying to cool getting, and how much do you want to cool it? And second of all, how much space do you actually have to work with? You'll see that it comes with a little bit of extra coolant, one Pure Wing 120mm fan, mounting hardware and all of the installation goodies that you'll need, and then the actual water cooling unit itself. And if you shake it, there's actually water already inside of it. So this unit is pretty much already set up and good to go. So what you'll do is you'll mount this radiator inside of your computer using the mounting hardware that comes with it. There's a set of 8 different screws. Along with that, you'll have your 2 different flavors of mounting material, whether it be AMD or Intel. You'll use the stock AMD bracket in order to mount this, and you'll use this back plate in the Intel hardware that is included in here to mount it to your Intel version. Be sure when you're installing this to remove the plastic warning and protecting part before you install this, otherwise you're going to overheat. You have one 3-pin connection, which is going to power the pump inside of the unit itself. This needs to be connected in any way, shape, or form. It has to be connected. Otherwise, you're going to overheat. The second one here is actually for the LED light that goes around the Be Quiet logo here. There's actually a frosted piece of plastic that goes all the way around it and is going to be illuminated by this 3-pin header. Everything is inside the manual here. It will give you a good bit of instruction to show you how to actually put this into your PC and to get it to work. Make sure you check the sizing and the spacing inside of your case. Most of the manufacturers will actually give you a diagram to show you what size radiators will fit and how many fans will actually fit too. These 3 different coolers that we have here, the Pure Loop AIOs from Be Quiet, would be a wonderful addition to any water cooling build or any custom computer that you're putting together for yourself. Again, lower temperatures mean better performance, means better longevity of the chip, and also means lower temperatures. Now we need a good way to power everything, right? So how much wattage do you need when it comes to a power supply? And what kind of power supply do you actually want inside of your computer? What we're going to do is talk to you about 2 different models that are relatively same, but have slight differences, and why you might want to pick one over the other. Now, how much wattage do you actually need when it comes to having a power supply? Well, that's kind of up to you. Check the manufacturer's spec sheet to see what the normal operating wattage is. You need to tally up how many hard drives you have, how many components you have plugged into them, how many RGB strips, all of that type of thing goes into it. What we have here are 2 different power supplies. The first one is a Pure Power 11, and the second one is a Straight Power 11. The difference between the 2 is one is semi-modular and one is full modular. Well, semi-modular means that some of the cables are completely detached. Now you have a little bit of a length coming out of here, which has your 24 pin and your 8 EPS pin there. Well, it's actually a 4+4, but it can also serve as an 8-pin EPS, which would be going to your motherboard. And then you also have 3 different ports for your drives or peripherals, and then you have 2 different ports for your PCI cables. Now, if you'd like a little bit cleaner of a look, you go with the Straight Power 11. Again, these are relatively comparable when it comes to power supplies and how they function. But when it comes to the cables and cleanliness, the full modular is going to be your best friend. And as you can see, when I pull this right out of the box, all you got is the square of the power supply. And on the front here, you have the labels for the motherboard, the 8-pin EPS or 4-pin, whichever, your drives or peripherals, and then your PCI lanes as well. And again, as you can see, there's no cables that are attached to it. So inside of this box here, you have a whole bunch of different cables that you can use at your disposal. For some of the new manufacturers, the motherboards that they have out there require a dual 8-pin EPS cable, or an 8 and a 4. That being said, this particular model comes with both. And the cool part about that is that inside here, one of these cables, so this is the single, which would be running just if you only have the one 8-pin connector. But if you have 2 of them, that's no big deal. Right off of the power supply, there is a split. So it has actually 2 8-pin EPS connectors. Power supplies are both highly rated and highly recommended power supplies, and they will definitely power pretty much anything that you throw at it. Depending on what your wattage is and how much consumption you're going to be using, you might want a different model. This is the 600 watt and this is the 650. Now they go anywhere from 500 all the way up to 1,000 or more. But it all depends on what you're going to be using it for in your build. Both are great options and both are relatively inexpensive and definitely a good peace of mind when it comes to putting it into your computer and supporting your new hardware.